Only Boost Mobile.
Boost Mobile?
We'll give you a free year of service.
Free year?
When you buy a new 5G phone.
New 5G phone?
Enough.
But I'm your hype man. When you purchase an eligible device, you get $25 off every month for 12 months with credits totaling 1 year of free service. Taxes extra for the device and service plan. Online only.
The market's uncertain. Revenue's tight and hiring on hold. That's why results-driven companies are using Upwork to keep work moving. Go to Upwork.com today and start hiring proven freelance talent fast. No bulky overhead. No rigid long-term contracts. Just the right expert right when you need them. Work smarter and faster with Upwork. Go to Upwork.com now and find your freelance expert. That's UPWORK.com. Post a job for free and get started today.
Stop settling for weak sound. It's time to level up your game and bring the boom. Hit the town with the ultra-durable LG X Boom portable speaker and enjoy vibrant sound wherever you go. Elevate your listening experience to new heights because, let's be real, your music deserves it. The future of sound is now with LG X Boom. And for a limited time, save 25% at LG.com with code FALL25. Bring the boom. X Boom.
Hello and welcome to Spy Hard's podcast. I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Ken the Provocateur, trying to sell Scott a computer.
Does it come with a mouse?
Yes, a wired mouse, because I'm trying to sell you a 1995 computer.
I actually miss those days. I don't know if you, just taking a break from the sort of usual spiel, do you miss those computers?
Like a Pentium 1 or Pentium 2 kind of thing?
Yeah, like the post-MS-DOS Windows 95, Windows 98 era.
That's very much the era when I'm in high school, and I remember the computer lab had a bunch of those types of computers, and people would get together and play Duke Nukem on them after hours.
Blow it out your ass. Yeah, they would. I had one at home, and we had loads of video games for it. I played a lot of RTS games back in those days, when I wasn't playing GoldenEye on my N64.
I played quite a few as well, yeah.
Yeah, good days, good times. And back in 1995, the man we're talking to today starred in a particular film.
Yes, he did. We are talking to actor Constantine Gregory, who appeared as a computer salesman in GoldenEye, but also has a litany of spy films under his belt. And we're going to dive into each and every one.
A lot to unpack, a lot to discuss. We're celebrating GoldenEye. Let's keep it going. Without further ado, let's get to the interview. Well, Cam, few can say they've been in a Bond film. Even fewer can say they've been in two. And even less people can say that alongside those two things, they've worked on Mission Impossible, a Jack Reacher film, and a Le Carre adaptation within their career. And so I leave myself thinking we might have one of the best spy resume guests I think we've ever had on the show. Joining us.
I'll add one. And who worked with Caterina Moreno.
Right.
Bond girl from...
They're lovely.
Which one? Which one was she in? I think the first... Wasn't it the first of the...
I think that's Casino Royale, isn't it not?
Casino Royale, I think.
You're testing my knowledge. You're putting me on the spot here. And I haven't introduced you. Joining us is the lovely Constantine Gregory. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello to you. Very glad to be here. Yeah.
I'm going to have to go through your IMDb whilst we're doing this interview to figure out what you worked with Caterina Moreno on.
I worked with her on a little movie directed by John Irvin. It was called Garden of Eden. And it was a triangle film with Jack Huston, Milena Suvari and not Milena Suvari and Caterina Marino. They were a sort of triangular relationship.
I'm gonna plumb the depths of your IMDb whilst we're doing this this here interview. That's gonna be my background research, and I have to self-correct myself before we get emails. It's not Jack Reacher.
No, I don't think I've done.
No, it's Jack Ryan.
Is it?
Sum of All Fears, and you did do that.
Ah, that's Jack Ryan. Yes, indeed.
But it's like the spy movie, not even a trifecta. There's multiple ports here, but they're like the biggest franchises that spy movie fans know and love. But before we get to Bond, before we get to all that, let's take it back a step. Let's go back to just that decision you made years ago to just get into acting. Why did that happen? Why did you make that choice, and why did you go down this path?
Well, it shows me really. I'm sure, like a lot of people. I mean, my first costumed appearance was when I was 3 in the local church kindergarten Christmas story, I think it was, and it was the Dance of the Mushrooms, and I was the naughty mushroom dressed in a sort of cylinder my mother made and a semicircular hat. And I was the naughty mushroom, took full advantage of that, loved the applause and the laughter, and that was it, really. I showed off from then on, dressed up, showed off, did anything I could to get attention.
So from that point, did you just direct yourself towards acting? Like, were you intentionally pursuing acting classes and things like that?
Yeah, well, here's the funny thing. When I was at school, right the way through school, I always performed. Sometimes I would make up a play and do it for other people. Sometimes I was in the school play or whatever. And I was always the lead. And then as I was growing up as a teenager, even early teenager, I was an avid film goer. But I mean, serious film go, I would go to Ingmar Bergman and Kurosawa and stuff like that. And my mother was also very keen on the theatre. We went to the theatre. We lived in London. We went to the theatre a lot and saw all of the great productions at the time, the Zeffirelli Romeo and Juliet, and, we saw Olivier and so forth. And indeed, I was always the lead in the school plays. And so the curious thing is that it never entered my head to be an actor. It didn't occur to me. I was going to be a banker, but I wanted to be a banker who traveled. And in those days, I thought, oh, I'll be a merchant banker. They're the ones who travel a lot. I think I always wanted to travel. But it was when I went to university where I read economics that there was a university group there. In those days, you couldn't study drama at university, except you could go to drama school, or Manchester and Bristol University were the only ones where you could study drama. So we had our own kind of extracurricular drama group. And I was at Trinity College, Dublin, and the college generously rented us a small room, a space, which we made into a theatre. And we, to cover costs and so forth, we had to play to the Dublin theatre going public. It was a small space. It sat about 80 people. And it was very close up. So the front row was only, a few feet away from you, which is something I've always loved. I've loved working really close to the audience. And we competed very successfully with professional theatre there. We put on a play every term, always did well. And that did it for me. I then realized what I had to do, and I realized I didn't want to do economics or banking or business. And so when I left university, I didn't really want to go on studying. So I just went in cold turkey. And fortunately, well, it was slow, but I found a bit of work. I got into the Actors' Equity very quickly because I happened to after university, I went to Belfast, a festival there, and did a review there for which I was very well paid. And so when I applied to join Equity, no, I know what it was. I was asked to do a Christmas play in the West End. And you couldn't do that if you weren't a full member of Equity, never mind probationary. You couldn't do it unless you were a full member. And so when I applied for my Equity card, they said, "Well, what have you done?" And then I said, "Well, I've done this and that." And I did this show in Belfast and I was paid 150 quid or something. They said, "Wow, you are professional." They gave me a professional card straight away. So I was able to do that Christmas show, and on it went. And it was slow to begin with. I didn't know anyone in the business. I didn't have contacts. But I did have one big advantage. I mean, I did what we do here in England with rep theatre, provincial theatre, and you go, I did all of that and thoroughly enjoyed it. But I got into movies early, comparatively early, because I had this advantage of speaking Russian. And at that time, we're now talking about late 60s, 70s, there were a lot of Cold War type movies being made. And so the baddies were always Russians. And they would use me, although they didn't necessarily want you to speak Russian, they wanted a Russian accent. So they kind of assumed that if you spoke Russian, you had a good Russian accent, which of course I do. So that really kicked me off. And at that time also, there were a relatively small number of actors, English actors, who did films abroad. When there were these kind of multinational casts doing movies in Morocco or Spain or wherever, there was a group of actors who were almost always in them, and I was lucky enough to be one of them. Always playing small parts, really, but playing with amazing other actors. There was an extraordinary film I was involved with called Voyage of the Damned.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it was, I mean, such a starry cast. It was just ridiculous. And there it was about a ship full of Jews who were fleeing Germany. They were allowed to go by the Germans because the Germans kind of knew they wouldn't be welcome anywhere, and they weren't. And I was the navigation officer, and the captain was Max von Sydow. So all my scenes were, I mean, how lucky is that, you know?
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. And lots of it was, I think, Jonathan Pryce's first movie. Malcolm McDowell was in it, and I mean, lots and lots of wonderful actors. So yeah, it was great, great fun. And also, Orson Welles. I actually met Wells in that film. He had a small part, and we were filming in Barcelona, and some of the other actors, the boys and I, were eating in a restaurant, and the great man himself sat down at a table. And I was nominated to go and introduce us to him. And so very timidly, I went, "Excuse me, Mr. Wells. Yeah. We just wanted to say, well, you know, great admirers, we're in the film with you." And, "Oh, yeah, well, you chose a good restaurant." And that was it. So, yeah.
Well, I was looking through some of the early credits you've got, and you're right. There is a sort of connection there. You've got like Russian corporal turning up,
Yes.
Volodin on Department S. But the one that jumped out to me, I think the first thing we'll jump in with, because spy movies are what we talk about. Because ironically, we're talking about GoldenEye's 30th anniversary is sort of our celebration we're doing, and that led me to reach out to you. But then I realized in the process, before GoldenEye even happened, you're in Diamonds Are Forever.
Yes, very peripherally. In the kind of main laboratory, I'm in the background tinkering on stuff behind what was called Metz, I think, was the senior scientist creating bad things. And but we filmed it over a few days, so I did hang around a bit with with Connery and the lovely Jill St. John. I was a little bit in love with this gorgeous lady. Yeah, that was fun. I mean, I can't even. I don't think I ever had any dialogue. I might have had some words that were cut out or something, but I was very much in the background on that.
Do you have any memories of just interacting with Connery at all on that set?
Not on that set. I worked with him later. I worked with him on a film called The Russia House.
Yes.
And we did engage. We did spend quite a bit of time together. He was a man who didn't socialize really. I'm not saying he was unfriendly. He was perfectly friendly and very, very friendly on set, but not a person you would then go out and have a drink with or have a meal with or anything like that. And he would also on set would spend quite a bit of time in the caravan. That was just who he was. He wasn't a social person.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask, just when you're working on Diamonds, what did being in a Bond film mean to you at that point? Were you someone who was like a big fan of the franchise, or?
No, it meant very little actually, other than it was a good gig, Yeah, I mean, I had seen the Bond films, but no, it was just another gig, and it was a fun one, and it was in a big movie, obviously, so that was all good. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned, you're in the background of that scene, and this actually is perhaps more of a broader question to how you would handle such work, because, as you say, some of your earlier roles were sort of in the background or smaller parts in films. How do you handle that as an actor, saying, okay, you have to stand in the background of this shot, and you want to make yourself stand out, but you don't want to make yourself stand out too much to get told off by the director? How do you handle sort of that sort of scene? Do you just find little things to play with on the set? Are you directed? How does that work?
Well, it very much depends on the director, and it very much depends on the assistant director. The assistant director, first AD, is in charge of background. Well, he's in charge of extras, really, but also small background. He will be the one to say, "Well, you cross here, you do this there." But you're right. You don't want to stand out. You don't want to distract from the action, from the main action, but you want to contribute to it. You want to be part of the color of the scene. So, yeah, you just do what you think is relevant for the scene. So it's a laboratory scene. You tinker away with the laboratory gear, in the background. They look like a technician. You don't, drop a test tube or
Start doing pratfalls.
light up a Bunsen burner on flames or something. That's what you don't do.
Well, I was going to just ask as well. Was that shot on Pinewood, that sequence?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Just any memories of that set? Because the set is actually really memorable.
It's a fabulous set. But of course, they always were fabulous sets. Ken...
Adam?
Who's the famous Adam? I mean, he was an extraordinary designer. And the rumor was that he would do these amazing rooms and furniture and all of that, which he would then take home. So I gather he had the most amazing house, the most amazing home, with fabulous carpeting and furniture and that sort of stuff. But yes, he was an extraordinary designer. The sets were amazing. It's a funny thing about sets, and obviously I've been on some amazing sets and amazing locations. And you go on, the first day you go on, and when you first see it, you go, wow, that is, God, I've never seen anything. Whoa, look at that. And it's such a short time before it just becomes your familiar, and you wander in and out and you're having coffee, and it's home suddenly. You just don't think about it. It really is, it's very interesting how quickly you adapt to the set, and it just becomes normal somehow.
Now, you alluded to having a mild crush on Jill St. John, and I think most people listening and watching would probably agree with you on that front. Did you ever pluck up the courage to go and say hello?
Oh yes, we did. We did talk. I remember, I would have a chair next to her and we chatted. She was very friendly. Yeah. Oh yes. I didn't go further than that though.
A gentleman wouldn't tell anyway. So,
No.
you're living out many people's dreams just by sitting next to the woman. We've been fortunate enough to have a couple of your co-stars from Diamonds on the show over the years, Lana Wood, Bruce Glover, and they've always talked about just how interesting that set was and how fun it could have been at times. So it's nice to hear that you had a good time making the film.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And I mean, we don't get to talk about Guy Hamilton all that much. Was he directing the scene? If you recall him being on the set at all?
Yes, he did. I don't recall much about it though. No, he certainly directed it. No, is the answer. I don't. I don't. It's a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
And it's yeah. I mean, some directors obviously really stick in your mind, but no, I can't remember anything about him.
That's fair. Well, then you're talking about differences in time. Let's move forward by about 25 years. We're going to go back again. Don't worry. There's some films from the 70s we want to talk about, but we're talking about GoldenEye this week anyway. So let's talk about that. You come back to Bond in 1995. You and Isabella Scorupco have a nice little scene in GoldenEye.
Oh yes, what a lovely lady.
But how did that come about for you? I mean, did you expect to ever have another phone call from the Bond production teams?
No, I didn't. It must have been the casting director, and there was one. I was cast, but then something extraordinary happened, which I'd never come across before, and I've never come across since, which is Martin Camp. I was called in to Pinewood to do a read-through of the script with some of the other actors. The reason being that Martin Campbell wanted to hear what it sounded like. He wanted to get a feel of the story as spoken by people, not just read, not just him reading it. But I thought it was rather interesting. So anyway, I turned up and there were 4 or 5 other actors, so we were all allocated parts. And then Campbell said, and Constantine, I'd like you to read the stage directions. So that was really interesting. And I tend to read, I do a lot of audiobooks things. I tend to read, when I read, I think I can see it all. It's all very visual in my mind. So I started reading the stage directions, not really as stage directions per se, but I'd say, and then we cut to Bond as they're doing this, then he's flying in there, and then meanwhile, and all that kind of thing, and tried to make it exciting, and it kind of worked. So we broke for lunch, and then after lunch we did it again, but this time with the sound recordist from the film, so that Campbell could have a recording of the read script, which I thought was a very interesting process, and I think I'm surprised more people don't do it in a way. So he would have had it almost like a radio play, as it were, in his mind, but he certainly would have the shape of the story more vividly than just, I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was very interesting. So then when I came to do, I wasn't on the set for very long, because it was a small scene. Again, we did it at Pinewood. Yeah.
Well, let's chart that back to that sort of group reading, because that's not something that's really ever spoken about in the behind the scenes, especially when it comes to your involvements. That's sort of new information there. Do you remember who you recorded that sort of round table with? Was it any of the other actors in the film?
I have no idea. I think it was some of the minor actors. I honestly can't remember who. We were already cast too, but I think probably in some of the minor parts. I don't remember. No, I don't remember who.
That is something new, and it's always a good thing when a director gives a cast time to sort of prepare and do a table read. But this is a very different thing, like an audio book before a film.
This is very different. No, a table read is quite different.
Yeah.
No, this was definitely for Campbell's benefit. So yes, it was. I've never come across that again, and I thought it was an interesting thing to do. If I were ever to direct, I might do that myself. You know how writers often say, playwrights say, "Oh my goodness," when I heard actors actually speaking my words, it was, transformational.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of what he was after, is to hear actors speaking and hearing different voices and that kind of thing.
Would you like to direct at some point?
Do you know, I thought about it a lot. I have peripherally directed in the sense that I have done many, many, many uh, post-production voice sessions which I've directed. And I like it. I like working with actors, but directing is, you have to also be a politician, but most importantly, directors have to have a lot of what I call stick-to-itiveness. If the first AD says, "No, Gov, we can't do that," you have to say, "Sorry, that's what I want to do." And I don't have that.
Right.
I'm very easily discouraged. If somebody says, "Oh, no, that's a bad idea," I say, "Oh, okay, I won't do it then."
Right.
So I would be a hopeless director in that sense. I think I would be good with actors and creative and so forth, but I don't have the personality or the courage, if you like, to do it. It needs a lot of guts.
For sure. For sure. Well, back to GoldenEye. We've never actually, I don't think, interviewed someone who worked with Isabella Skrupko.
Uh-huh.
And I would just like to know, just from your experience working with her in that scene in the computer store.
She was just a lot of fun, just a lovely, fun lady. We laughed, and we played around, and that did the scene. It's like any other actor. No, she's very charming, absolutely charming.
And there's a fun little comedic beat to your back and forth with her with when you pop your head back in and get barked at. Like, brilliant.
I'm completely unaware of it. I haven't seen the film since it was made, so I'm not aware of this. And it's been mentioned a couple of times. You're not the only people who've mentioned it and say there was this kind of, it was a moment in the film that people remember, which I find flattering and interesting, but I don't remember it at all.
Because it's always the bit for me is the tie fix where where she sort of says her order and you're like, oh, hello, it's a sale. And
Yes, yes.
as a former salesman, that always spoke to me as I've done that myself. I've been like, oh, business.
Yeah, well, you try to think up little things, to make a scene. And I mean, my one contribution was the comb over. I got I thought with the makeup people, I said, I tell you what, I think you're the sort of person who would have a comb over. What do you think? So they fixed my hair so it looked as though I had a comb over.
And comparing 1971, I believe it was, to 1995, very long time ago compared to 1995. But did you get a sense that the sets had evolved much for Bond? Because they felt like they were a lot of the same teams over the years, quite a family team.
I think it was very much the same team. That was very much the ethos of the Bond setup. Technically, obviously, there have been a lot of advances. Funnily enough, my grandson, who's 16, is now embarked on a film studies course, but he's already such a buff. I mean, for a modern 16-year-old to love black and white movies and to into Billy Wilder, and I mean, it's just amazing. And he has an amazing memory. He remembers who did what, when, who directed it, what year. I mean, all that kind of thing. But we're actually his first term doing the film studies thing, and he said, "Could he come and interview me, because he's doing a project on what the technological or the technical changes in filmmaking over the last 50 years." He said, "Well, you've been doing it 50 years. You can tell." Fascinating. Actually, it made me stop and think of the technological changes in 50 years, which are extraordinary, of course. The difference, I mean, even in the first Bond I did, where the equipment was heavy, where the cameras, you had film stock, obviously, and The cameras have big, blimps on them to keep the sound out. And then, of course, sound is developed phenomenally. The recording of sound from analog to digital is, a huge leap. There is one. I mean, there are obviously many advantages in the digital process, but I think there's one big disadvantage, which is you can have as many takes as you like. You can do the same in post-production. So the element of being forced to make a choice has gone. And I would say with less experienced or maybe talented directors, they will do 80 takes when you really only need to do 3. They can't make up their mind. There's just too much choice. Whereas with old film stock, you really had to. And then the other interesting thing that when we were doing the first Bond and would have been different for the second Bond was the video camera. The fact that the director would have to stand by the camera and look at the scene physically.
Yeah.
And in his eye would have to be to know where the framing was and where to cut and so on and so forth, and the angles. That would be in his head. Whereas, of course, by the second Bond, you had monitors, and that was such a difference. That was a leap, huge leap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the Video Village beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember, when Bertolucci used digital on Little Buddha, and he really didn't like it. He said, "No, but I like the feel of the film. I must feel it in my fingers." And I kind of understand that. I mean, of course, I remember perfectly well editing film with razor blades and sticky tape and so forth on a Steenbeck. And then it becomes quite different when you're digital on a desk, just cutting and slicing, shaping with knobs.
And you also hear more now of when you have these, thousands of choices you can just do, just options. You hear the term more now of finding the movie in the editing room than you often did in the past. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, yeah, it is a different process. I mean, I think nerdy directors like, I don't know, Tarantino or someone, they probably work in an old-fashioned way. I don't suppose he waits till the editing suite to make his film. The auteurs, if you like, probably do that, but your common or garden directors, TV directors and so forth, I think probably, well, they sort of know what they want, but they don't know until they play around with it, and maybe the editor then is a big help. It's rather like when you're filming, and if you're an inexperienced director, then it's the cameraman who is your major help. And I'm sure for less experienced directors, it's the editor who really makes the good decisions.
Well, there's a spy film we're going to talk about that you were in and worked on as a dialect coach as well. In a little bit, The Russia House, that had a very interesting shooting style with that. So we'll come back to that in a second. But I wanted to ask one more thing about GoldenEye before I move us on, and that is, obviously Martin Campbell brought you in to do that table read, but did you get much else in terms of direction from him when you were doing that scene with Isabella, or was that handled by second unit?
No, it was handled by him, but I don't remember anything particular. I think we kind of improvised a scene, and he liked it, and we shot it. And it was a kind of fun thing to do. It wasn't hugely demanding. You've got a couple of actors who sort of know what they're doing and they want to have fun, and Yeah.
Do you often find if people come up to you about Bond films or write to you about Bond films, is it more GoldenEye or Diamonds that you hear about?
That's a good question. It's a bit of both, really. I mean, a Bond geek is a Bond geek, isn't he?
Very true.
You're looking at two of them.
Yeah.
The market's uncertain, revenue's tight, and hiring on hold. That's why results-driven companies are using Upwork to keep work moving. Go to Upwork.com today and start hiring proven freelance talent fast. No bulky overhead. No rigid long-term contracts. Just the right expert right when you need them. Work smarter and faster with Upwork. Go to Upwork.com now and find your freelance expert. That's UPWORK.com. Post a job for free and get started today.
Stop settling for weak sound. It's time to level up your game and bring the boom. Hit the town with the ultra-durable LG X Boom portable speaker and enjoy vibrant sound wherever you go. Elevate your listening experience to new heights because, let's be real, your music deserves it. The future of sound is now with LG X Boom. And for a limited time, save 25% at LG.com with code FALL25. Bring the boom. X Boom.
Well, then let's travel back again. Like I said, that's Bond. We've talked about Bond, but you've done many other spy movies that you've worked on as an actor and in other roles. So let's go back to The Tamarind Seed.
Right.
Blake Edwards directed, usually well known for his Pink Panther films. But any particular memories of that set and working with Blake Edwards?
Well, Blake Edwards, I mean, Julie Andrews, I fell in love with. Julie Andrews is the funniest, filthiest mouthed lady you could come across. Hilariously funny, rude and witty and just great. A complete joy to be with. And Blake Edwards is lovely, and certainly they were just a couple who adored each other and played off each other, and yeah, it was great. It wasn't a particularly good film, but I do think that the Pink Panthers were a joy. And Julie Andrews was always good. She was a very underrated actress, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And I think her porcelain features kind of acted against her, because she was a seriously good actress.
And why don't we perhaps now jump over to Russia House, a movie we've referenced several times.
Mm-hmm.
And just the experience, how did you join that production?
Well, that was a really interesting experience. I joined the production to be a dialogue coach.
Yeah.
Initially, I was taken on to help Michelle Pfeiffer and to help the Russian actors who'd be involved to act in English. Now, what was really interesting about that film was that it was the first Western film to be shot in Soviet Russia. It was still Soviet Russia, just. And it was also a time of stagnation in Russia. The poverty level was extraordinary. And we had to bring in, for instance, our own Xerox copying machines and so forth, because they were illegal in Russia. You couldn't have them. So we brought in a lot of equipment. Most importantly, we brought in food. We had this amazing English caterer, and he brought his, Western style catering trucks and equipment, and ingredients and food from Finland. They had this convoy that came down from Finland, guarded convoy. So it was kind of established on the first day of shooting, which was an exterior. We were in St. Petersburg, and there was the catering truck, and we had breakfast, and it was the sort of breakfast we were used to. A table laden with fruit and cold stuff, and then hot food coming out of the catering truck. Well, all of the Russian extras were just speechless. One of them said, "Is that a pineapple? I've heard about pineapples, but I've never seen one. And those are bananas. Oh my goodness!" And there was sugar and coffee and tea and so forth. And they hadn't smelt or seen such food, never mind the quantity of it. And it became a bit embarrassing. Being Russians, of course, they would stuff a lot of the sugar and tea packets and things into their pockets. And I remember I was helping an elderly actor, and I was in the caravan he was using for dressing and so forth. And he said, and he was a rather distinguished actor. And he said, "Do you think the costume department would allow me to take home a couple of coat hangers?" And indeed, there was a lot of theft from the costume department. We were going crazy because clothes were just disappearing. But we did establish that any food that wasn't eaten at a mealtime or something was just left, and the truck would be there, and people passers-by could help themselves and so forth. Then there were other elements about that production, because it was the first Western production, and all the equipment and so on and so forth was just, they couldn't believe it. And they couldn't believe the thing about the big difference of filming in the West at that time and in the Eastern Bloc. In the Eastern Bloc, the most expensive element of making a film was film stock. Whereas in the West, the most expensive element is time. And time didn't matter in the East. They don't care. They had actors, they could make a film over 6 months, and the actor would come and go. There were always plenty of actors. The main actors were under a kind of permanent contract. They didn't cost any more. What was really expensive was the stock. So you limited the number of takes you took. The other thing that was expensive was the chemicals that you used to process the stock, and so forth. And they couldn't understand where we would film and do several takes, and nobody really cared. But you did have time pressure. Come on, sun's going. Got to get this shot in, got to move on. The Russians didn't understand that. Why not just do it another day? Oh, well, we have got time. We've got a budget to fit. So it was a completely different approach to how you made a film. And I became great friends with the Austrian actor.
Klaus Maria Brandauer?
Klaus Maria Brandauer, yes. We kind of bonded. And he was given this vintage ZIL limousine, which was a prop on the thing, but he used it to take him to and from hotel and so forth. And we rode in it a few times, and we had this awful game. We'd sit in the back and say, how many lives were decided in the back of this ZIL, because it had a partition with the chauffeur, and it was only for the high-ups. So yes, we were there deciding the fates of people sitting in the back of the limo. And at that time in Russia, there were very few cars on the road, very few. And you were constantly being hassled by young men who sell you watches, or particularly exchange money for, they wanted hard currency, they wanted our dollars, and in exchange for rubles. And we were very strictly told not to do this. But obviously we did, some did. And those people, those young men, were the people who became the oligarchs. Those street urchins, well, they weren't urchins, they were kind of young men in their 20s. And they were the ones who took over, because they had the street smarts and the market savvy. the Abramoviches of this world and so forth. Those are the ones. Those are the guys. And I didn't, in fact, work with Michelle Pfeiffer because, or I did very marginally, because she kind of took on a local Russian girl.
Oh.
She had a dialogue. She did have some help from Tim Monick, the famous dialogue coach. He didn't come to the set. She had some preparation with him. And he, in fact, had recommended me. But she got this young Russian girl, and she just mimicked her, worked with her, and she was brilliant. I mean, her Russian accent was just perfect. And Connery, I helped a bit because he had a few Russian phrases he had to say, and so I worked with him a bit. And then, sadly, I had to leave the production quite quickly because my mother died. My mother was dying, and my then wife called me and said, "It's not good. You better come home." And production were just extraordinary. It was very difficult to get out at short notice. And they found a flight that took me to Vienna, and then from Vienna I got to London, and then my mother died that night. And so I had to stay around and so forth. And production paid me for the rest of the shoot, which was another kind of 8 or 9 weeks or so. It gave me full pay.
Wow.
And although I did pick up work on the shoot, they came to England for about 3 weeks, and I worked with them because there were quite a few of the supporting actors needed help, and so I worked with them then. And to my, well, an extraordinary piece of fate, met my future wife, who was a Russian actress, didn't speak any English. And they called me and said, could you help her? And in fact, we did a scene together. And could you show her around? She does speak English. And so I showed her around London. It was a beautiful day, I remember. And we kept up, after that, correspondence. Because I then had to pick her up. When she finished the film, I had to pick her up from her hotel and sort out some papers and things. And so we had that evening together. And then I was married at the time, and then we had this kind of curious postcard relationship for about a year, which was quite flirtatious. And of course, I got a job in Russia suddenly on a film that was being shot in Russia. And we met up there, and then all sorts of things happened that led to divorce and marriage. And my second wife, which was a turbulent, shall we say, 10 years or so of alcohol and depression and all sorts of Russian things. So yeah, the Russia house was quite significant in my life.
Holy smokes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you're talking about your memories of the Russia house. You're jumping to sort of the production window where you were there in Russia. And we've been fortunate enough over the years of doing the show to have both the DP from the film, Ian Baker, and the director, Fred Skepsey, on the show to talk about making the film.
Skepsey's a lovely man.
Lovely. I think we spent 2.5 hours with him. It was a great interview. And he was talking about some of the struggles they had with things like the food, and also just like they had to give shoes out to people to get stuff done. It was like a bartering system at times to get things done. And that whole pressure of being the first Western production, because The Russia House isn't a particularly hugely celebrated spy film, but it's quite important in the history of cinema when you look back on things that happened. And I think it does a wonderful job of painting that sort of post-Cold War feel of Russia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. No, I agree. It was an extraordinary experience. And remember, too, that I had another significant experience with the first major Western movie to be made in China.
Which was?
Last Emperor.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The Last Emperor. That was an amazing experience. We spent 3 months in China, more, and another couple of months in Italy. Um, to work with Bertolucci was extraordinary,
Mm-hmm.
and Vittorio Storaro. Uh, to spend, I think, 40 shooting days in the Forbidden City, which we would go in before the Forbidden City was largely, well, a great part of the Forbidden City, which is a huge complex. Um, Quite a large part of it was derelict and pretty much in ruin. They were in the process of some restoration. Tourists saw a restored part of the Forbidden City, and there were many, many tourists each and every day. But we worked in another part of the compound, and of course, we dressed it up the way it should look. And that was, we would go in early in the morning before the place was open, total quiet. And I remember there was a scene which was shot on the roof, on a roof, and I was up there on the roof of these extraordinary blue tiles. And I had this, I mean, I'm so blessed. I've had such an amazing career that has been full of so many pinch me moments. And one of them was sitting on this roof and thinking, apart from the man who put the tiles on the roof, no one has had this view. And it was just, there were so many. There was another pinch me moment where there was a theater in the Forbidden City, and it was not unlike the Globe. It was an open courtyard with a three-tiered stage. And then the courtyard was bordered by kind of galleries, so that for the posh public and the unwashed public would be in the courtyard. And we did 3 nights, balmy nights, filming there. And if you can imagine, it was all costumed of the period. And we had the Peking Opera performing. And that was just such a pinch me moment. It hadn't been used since the imperial times, but we somehow took it back, and we were part of it. I was sitting there with all these people in these amazing costumes, which Jim Atchison did, and he won an Oscar for. It won a lot of Oscars, that film. I think it won 10 Oscars. And it was my first major dialogue coaching job, and that's really what gave me credibility and led to a lot of other work. And I got that work by typical chance, the kind of chance that changes your life. I did a lot of post-production revoicing, ADR stuff,
Yeah.
looping, and at one point, my partner and I were asked by a casting director if we knew of anyone who might dialogue coach a project that was being shot in what was then Yugoslavia. It was the story of Mussolini with George C. Scott, and rather inappropriately cast, but so I thought, and they wanted to have everyone have an Italian accent, a slight Italian accent. So well, maybe I could do that. I fancy that. So I convinced the producers that I was the right man for the job, and I went out to Yugoslavia. And after a couple of days, I met George C. Scott in the bar, and I said, Mr. Scott, just introduce myself. I'm Constantine. I'm the dialogue coach, and I just wanted to know how much of an Italian accent you plan to use, because I'll use you as the model and people will follow what you do. I ain't talking no fucking Italian accent. So it became a question of everyone talking with slight American accents, and in those days you had, I mean, that was a star-studded thing. There was Robert Downey Jr., I think, in his first film part. He was about 18 at the time, and so wild. Lee Grant, who played Mrs. Mussolini, who suffered from Peter Panism, and she just wanted to be so young and girly and so forth. Really extraordinary. Virginia Marsden, Raul Julia, bless him, Gabriel Byrne. I mean, what a cast it was. What a cast. And so anyway, I was doing that and I loved it. I absolutely loved what I was doing, working with a lot of wonderful Yugoslav actors. One of the joys of my life has been to, when you do these multinational films, you get really fine local actors to play very small parts. They're national theatre players, they're big stars in their own country. And such a joy to work with. And my role was not to make them speak English brilliantly. That was really not the point. The point was to help them to act well or feel free to act in a language that's not their own. It's not their first language. And that is a monstrously difficult thing to do, because you can't have the flow of the dialogue broken by hesitation and stumbling and so forth. It's not. And the thing is that quite often foreign actors who speak English moderately well convince you that they can do it because you don't notice it when you're just talking to somebody. You don't notice somebody grammatically wrong or not using the right word or whatever. However, you can't do that on screen. So my job was always to give them the confidence to act well, to act as well as they possibly could. And we would take care of that. As long as the lips moved in the right rhythm. I said, don't worry, don't obsess about sounding English, but that wasn't the point anyway, because usually their character was foreign and they're quite acceptable to have a foreign accent. So that was my joy, is to work with these wonderful actors and give them confidence and give them, help them to act as well as they did, as they were, because they were such good actors. So that was such a joy. Anyway, on this film was a boom operator called Colin Wells. Yeah. And we had done other work together. We did, in fact, do more films together later. And he was this boom operator. He was a very chatty chap, and he was very flirtatious, always talking to any ladies nearby. And so he was a real Londoner, lovely guy. And we ran out of actors who could speak English, because it was a 10-part series or something, a massive cast list. And we ran out of actors. So we started using members of the crew. A very good thing to do, for crews to be in front of the camera. And they realize, whoops, it's not quite as easy. And they're always mocking fucking actors, coming out of their caravans. We're standing in the rain, bloody actors. And then they're put in front of a camera. I think, oops. Well, Colin was one of them. We got him to play a couple of lines, and I helped him do it. And he got through it, bless him. And he always remembered this. And so nothing happened after this particular film other than other work that I did, but no dialogue coaching stuff. And Colin was on a film, and there was a lady there who was a well-known dialogue coach at the time. And she was saying, oh, somebody's talking about a film in China, and I don't know. They might approach me, and I don't want to go anyway. And Colin was earwigging and listening in, and he said, I know someone, he's a really good dialogue coach, I'll work with him. And that led to a call from Bertolucci, and the rest is history.
Just crazy circumstances,
isn't it? It's I mean, and that was life-changing. That was literally life-changing.
Yeah.
It changed my life in ways that I wouldn't have expected, in that my acting career changed. It took a downward turn, if you like, in that I then became so involved with these international feature films that I'd be away for 3, 4, 5 months. And obviously, my acting agent couldn't sell me for acting. So there I was. I mean, I sometimes got little parts in the films I was working on, but the acting career that was expected of me didn't happen. And I'm not sad, I mean, at all, because the opportunities I had to travel all over the world and work with so many amazing people, it was a huge privilege, huge.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Agent, we don't expect you to talk. We expect you to buy a subscription to our Patreon.
Yee. That's right. Over on the Spy Hard's Patreon, we're covering all your favorite spy TV shows, as well as popular films from the most iconic secret agent actors of all time.
Cam, why don't you share some intel on our latest assignment?
So long, September. Hello, spooky season. Now is a great time, though, before we get to the horror of it all, to reflect on the offerings over on the Patreon for the month of September. We had reviews of The Great Escape and The Man Who Would Be King. Plus, also, we took a look at Slow Horses Season 3. All that and ad-free episodes. So what more could you want? No, really, tell us, because we might actually give it to you over on the Patreon.
So, tune your dial to patreon.com/spyhards and spice up your podcast feed.
But before Nick Knack runs out of Tabasco, resume the Spy Jinx.
The market's uncertain, revenue's tight, and hiring on hold. That's why results-driven companies are using Upwork to keep work moving. Go to Upwork.com today and start hiring proven freelance talent fast. No bulky overhead. No rigid long-term contracts. Just the right expert right when you need them. Work smarter and faster with Upwork. Go to Upwork.com now and find your freelance expert. That's UPWORK.com. Post a job for free and get started today.
PNC Private Bank doesn't take unnecessary risks managing your wealth because we know that maintaining its integrity is important to you. But as humans, we crave a little adrenaline, so our advisors have some ideas.
Sometimes I book a hotel without reading the reviews.
Occasionally, when no one is looking, I double dip.
Once while driving, I came to a full stop for 2 seconds instead of 3.
However you get your kicks, just know your wealth will remain steady and secure with us. PNC Private Bank. Brilliantly boring since 1865. PNC Bank National Association, member FDIC.
There was a couple of films I wanted to ask you about, just in terms of dialogue coaching, depending on the credit. First up, in 1996, Mission Impossible, the Brian De Palma film.
Yes, it's a kind of fake credit, really. I was asked to go in and help Tom Cruise with some Russian phrases, which he needed to do. I did, and went into Pinewood and worked with Cruise, and he was a delight. And I later worked with Kidman. And then on the day that he was to do it, I went into the studio and introduced myself to Mr. De Palma. I'm Constantine, dialogue coach, helping Tom with his Russian. Oh, yeah, okay. And that was it. And then I found De Palma, his method, very strange. He didn't talk to anybody except Cruise.
Right.
And I think maybe his DP. And that was it. And I went to I always kind of, when I'm a dialogue coach, my first port of call is always the sound operator. And I usually, the safest place to be is by the sound crew. So I always become friends with the sound people. And I talked to a sound guy and I said, he's not talking to me at all. He's not. And he said, no, I've been on this film for 8 weeks. He's never spoken a word to me. Really odd, I thought. Very odd.
He's a very unique director. I mean, you look at his movies, they're all very De Palma, but obviously his style is a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that was my credit on that. But I met him again, as I say, when I did a film called Peacemaker with Nicole Kidman. Yeah. And it was a time when they were together and he came out to the set. Well, we were to at the location, rather. And he was charming and fun. And yeah, he was Cruise.
Yeah, and the other one I was going to ask about was actually a more recent one, 2017, Atomic Blonde. And that film, was that working with Charlize Theron?
You know, I have not worked on Atomic Blonde, and I don't know how that credit popped up.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's on your IMDb.
I know, and I don't know unless it's a film that I somehow worked on and the title changed.
That's possible. That is possible.
I don't even know. Let me look it up. I don't know what Atomic Blonde is even about. Let me see.
According to IMDb, it's your most recent dialect coach work, but I'm trying to see behind the scenes. David Leitch was basically always on it.
You know, it absolutely means nothing to me.
Interesting. Okay, well,
Yes. I mean, sometimes I will have helped somebody in the cast in England, you know, preparing or something that happens. I might have worked with James Faulkner. I don't know. Very odd. I can't help you there, I'm afraid.
I'm gonna have to go back and revisit the film and see if you're in the credits on the end of the film. I want to see.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. That's interesting. Well, there is. I mean, that's the dialogue coach stuff, and you've basically worked with a lot of the spy movie greats. We've spoken about Sean. We've spoken about Tom Cruise. There is one spy movie franchise we haven't really spoken about, and that is The Sum of All Fears. Jack Ryan film, and you worked on that one. You're acting as not dialogue coaching. You're doing a lot of scenes with Kieran Hines on that set. Any memories of putting that one together? Memories of Kieran, memories of Phil?
Yes, very happy memories because it was shot, or the scenes I was involved in. We shot in Montreal. I'd never been to Montreal, and we were there at the height of winter, so it was like 6 foot deep in snow. And I just fell in love with it. I absolutely loved Montreal. I'd love to go back to Montreal. It seemed to have everything about it. I don't know. It was one of those things. And it was fun to work on. But of course, the highlight of it all was the director's girlfriend.
Okay.
That was the highlight of it, the whole experience. To meet the director's girlfriend was everyone's dream. And now, who is the director's girlfriend? Long live-in partner, I should say.
You get Cam. Well, we've had Phil Alden Robinson on the show, so I really should know the answer to that question, seeing as we spoke about Sum of All Fears for about an hour.
Yeah.
Carole King.
Carole King.
No. Wow. And what a lady. What a wonderful, warm personality. What fun.
So was she just on the set hanging out
with
Phil?
Hanging out, yeah.
Ah.
There to see her man, you know.
Why not? I mean, it was a production that Phil wasn't really prepared to go into at the start. He wasn't really looking to do it, and he was sort of convinced to do the film. So that's interesting that he brought his wife along, or his partner, I should say. There you go.
Yes.
You're doing a lot of scenes with Kieran, and obviously Phil's there directing. Any memories of being directed by Phil Alden Robinson apart from Carol?
No.
Fair enough.
My eyes were not on Phil. And Kieran was such fun to be with. I mean, he's such a nice man and very Irish and warm and humorous and just lovely. Yeah, no, it was a good experience.
And that's in the sort of the period of your career where you're doing a lot more dialogue coach work and less on the acting front. Was it? So you were still doing both. It was just sort of harder to juggle the two at that point.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yes, I was pretty. Not, I'd say, constant. No jobs are constant in the film industry, but I was frequently employed. I got a kind of reputation. I have told this story before, but I did something that was extraordinary. Again, it was sort of chance. I was called one day saying, could I go into Shepperton the next morning, first thing? They were having a problem on a film, and maybe I could rescue it. And so I went in, and it seemed that it was a film called Conspiracy with Kenneth Branagh and a whole host of top English male actors. David Thewlis was in it, I think, and and Tom Hiddleston had a 2-line part in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was his first film. And it was a film about this high command meeting to decide the fate of the Jews. And it was at a place called Wannsee, and it was a well-known thing. Nobody actually knew what was discussed, but they had a pretty good idea. And so this was a film about the meeting. It was directed by the most wonderful man who was then the head of the Academy.
Frank Pearson.
Frank Pierce, thank you. My memory is not, I'm 83, so it's a bit tricky. Frank Pierce, who actually also wrote Dog Day Afternoon, Cat Ballou, and Cool Hand Luke.
Not a bad trifecta.
That's not a bad trilogy of films to have written. And he was an absolute delight. And we had an editor, an elderly editor, who was from Vienna. He'd come to America from Vienna before the war, I think, but still talked a very heavy Viennese accent. And we had the cinematographer from, I think it was Towering Inferno, one of those, major things. Lethal Weapon, I think it was. Anyway, here was the problem. The problem was that I was presented with at 7 in the morning. They were having their first day's shoot, and they were supposed to all have German accents. Yes, the actors weren't happy. They had this person trying to give them a German accent. They weren't happy at all, and they were refusing to do it. And HBO, who were in charge of things, said, well, we don't want them to be just English. And we may well pull the plugs if that's what happens. Don't want to be a sort of English business conference. And I was so lucky. I suddenly, sometimes a lightning bolt hits you and inspires you. And I said, I'll tell you what, why don't we try and take out all contractions in the script. So instead of don't, you say do not. Instead of won't, you say will not, and so forth. And ask them to speak very, very articulately, very precisely in English. And I said, well, okay, if you think that'll work, try it. So I go to Kenneth Branagh's dressing room and I say, excuse me, Mr. Branagh, I gather you've got this problem. He said, yeah, none of us want to do this stupid German accent. So I said, well, how about this approach? And he liked it. He said, yeah, that sounds good. And so I was able to go to the other actors and say, well, Kenneth Branagh's very happy to do it. Were you willing to try? It was also something that was very easy to control. It was very easy to say, remember, you're doing a contraction, don't do that. And just beef up the articulation. But it was magic, because what happened was they were speaking English, but they were speaking English in a very precise and articulate way. And there was no accent there at all. It was just frightfully precise. And it sounded sort of Germanic, but it also sounded period. And it was just, it worked wonderfully, and it was very easy to do. So everyone was happy. And Branagh won an Emmy or Golden Globe or something. So
Did you get a shout out in the speech for saving the film?
No, of course not. No.
Well, now the world knows you saved that production.
So, yeah.
I also wanted to just quickly ask about another guest we had on the show, Matthew Vaughn. You worked on The Kingsman. Memories of that set, because he's a very unique director himself.
Yes. Not my happiest memory. I went out. We were filming in Turin. And I had quite a nice little scene. And I went there with this extraordinary makeup, this huge Austrian moustache and so forth. I was the mayor of Sarajevo. So I turn up in the morning, I'm get all the makeup and so forth, and I wait, and then I go on set where the mayor is receiving the Archduke and so forth. So I'm in the scene all day for this initial scene, but which is prior to my scene with the Archduke. And we seemed to be running out of time and so forth. We had a particularly unpleasant first assistant who liked to shout at people. And Matthew Vaughn never introduced himself to me or anything like that. So then it became apparent that the day was running out and we weren't going to do the scene that day. So as we were preparing to wrap, I went up to Matthew Vaughn and said, so what's the score? When are we going? Oh, no, we're not going to do it now. This is the last day of shooting here, so we lose the set and we're not going to do it. That was it. No apology, no sorry to keep you waiting, no sorry. And that was that. So I never did the scene. I can't say, and I think it's not unusual for people who not have happy experiences working with Matthew Vaughn.
We've had a couple of stories over the years, and had our own experiences with him too. To be fair, I've interviewed him one-on-one in person, and it's an interesting experience for sure. But I don't want that to be our final chapter when it comes to spy movies. Holistically looking back on, because we've spoken about 6 or 7 spy movies now, I think, that you've worked on throughout your careers thus far. I usually would ask what was the most impactful, but I feel like that was the Russia House for you. That was probably the one you look back on most fondly. And correct me if I'm wrong, it might be a Bond film or something like that.
Well, as a spy movie, yes, I'd say the Russia House. Well, I liked Sum of All Fears as well. In terms of experiences, I mean, I've had...
Yeah.
I mean, like The Last Emperor was a life-changing experience because that led to 2 more films of Bertolucci, which were in itself just such an extraordinary experience to work with him. It also... One of my favorite dialogue coaching experiences was to... People say... reputations of actors or directors or whatever, sometimes you say, I'm going to work with George C. Scott. They say, oh, God, be careful, it's, be careful with stories. Anyway, so I go to work with George C. Scott, and there's a scene, and things were pretty tense. He didn't get on with Lee Grant, who played his wife. She was always late on set, all that kind of thing. And there was this one particular tense scene where Scott and Grant were in this little kitchen, and Grant was late, finally turned up, and there was just electricity in the air. Mm-hmm. And in those days, of course, if you were on sound, you had to be near you didn't have this sort of radio ability of being in another room or something like that. So I was on the set, this tiny set, hiding, under a sink or something. George C. Scott has a speech, quite a long bit of dialogue, and the sound recordist, Constantine, he's saying "Signor" in the Spanish way, not the Italian way. I think you should tell him. I said, no, George, I think we'll just leave that be and let, things are a bit tense. Oh, I know, but I think you should say, no, I'm not going to do it now. So another take, Constantine, he's done it again. I know, George, let it go. Third time, Constantine, if you don't say something, I will. So I go up to George C. Scott, and I say, Mr. Scott, you're saying "Signor" in the Spanish way, and it really should be the Italian way. Constantine, you fucking punk, get out of my face! Exploded. And the AD comes up to me and says, Constantine, I think perhaps you should take the day off.
Oh, no.
And the next day, I'm on set. It's an open set. It's this airfield. We're out in an airfield. And I'm there by the sound crew, and I see Scott coming on to at the bottom of the field, and he's walking this long, long walk, coming towards me and coming towards me, getting nearer and nearer, and I'm trying to there's nowhere to hide. And he comes up to me, and I think I'm about to be fired. And I stand up and say, "Good morning, George." And he embraces me in the strongest hug a man can give a hug. And he said, "I'm so sorry. I was so unprofessional. You were doing your job. And I do apologies. Please accept my apologies." Well, so what can you say,
Yeah, it's like only the first half of your story is typically what's published, right? When it comes to like
That's
George
right.
C. Scott.
That's
but
right.
There was a more complex, there's layers to him. He wasn't a one-dimensional character.
No, well, the thing is about people in general, but certainly creative people who are probably more sensitive than a lot of others. If they behave badly, there's usually a reason. It's almost always insecurity. It's they're not secure.
Mm-hmm.
I did a film with Nicole Kidman where she didn't behave terribly well, and with good reason, because the script changed every single day, and it was very technical. It was a film called The Peacemaker.
Yeah.
And it was just constantly changing. It was very technical dialogue. She was very unhappy, and she didn't. She was a bit temperamental. And I was called out to do another film with her much later, called Birthday Girl.
Yeah.
And I was flown out to Australia, and we were going to do some rehearsal there, first of all. And I was a bit nervous about meeting her, and we were in this hotel or something, went into the place we were rehearsing, and there she was. And she embraced me and hugged me, Constantine, "Oh, wonderful to see you." And then we had one of the happiest shoots I've ever been on. We shot the whole thing in Australia, large part of it in Australia and the rest back in England. And Ben Chaplin, and it was just happy. Vincent Cassel and Mathieu Kassovitz, who were my responsibility playing these mad Russians. And it was such a joy. And Nicole Kidman was one of the lads, and we would always have parties at the end of the week, and it was a different person. And it was all to do with feeling secure and feeling happy, and,
like a good work environment. If it's not a good work environment, people aren't at their best.
Yeah, that's right. People are not bad people. They're just, you have to take their behavior with a pinch of salt. And when I did come across sort of, let's say, irritable actors or something, I'd usually try and find out why or what was bothering them, and I'd get around it and get them on board,
Well, you've got one of those professions where, you're getting to be with someone intensely for 3 months, and then you could never see them again, or you see them in 20 years' time. Whereas
absolutely,
me and Cam work in jobs where we see the same people every day, and it's a very different vocation. So yeah, it can be a very intense thing.
Well, particularly, in early days, before internet, you were in a bubble on location. You were in a bubble, a rather extraordinary bubble, where it's self-feeding, it's self-paying, it's comforting. You're in comfortable digs wherever you are. You're the crappiest of countries. You're in very comfortable digs, and you're looked after, and you are with everyone involved, from the director to the second painter and the third makeup lady, are at the top of their game. They're all experts. They were selected. And all of this energy, all of this craft, all of this skill is focused into the center, onto the point of the action. The energy, all of that energy is pointed on the center. And you create relationships almost instantly. You meet somebody on set, and within a few hours, you know how many children they've got, where they come from, and so on. It's instant. That's why affairs happen, of course. And the other bizarre thing, there's this kind of Freemasonry too, because you quite often at the end of a film, you're given T-shirts or some memento, but usually a T-shirt or a sweatshirt that has the film logo on it or something like that. 3 years later, you're on a film and one of the crew has one of these T-shirts. And you say, oh, were you working on that? Did you know Charlie? He was on that film. So, oh, Charlie, yeah, I remember him. Oh, he's got married and divorced, got three, and there's this kind of extraordinary Freemasonry that you keep up with people, even though you're not in touch. And you're right, you form these very intimate, usually you buddy up with somebody and you go out with them every evening, because that's what you do. You go out and find somewhere to eat and so forth. And since I like food, I was often the person who was asked, where do we go? And so that and that bond of friendship does completely disappear as soon as you finish the film, but it doesn't in a curious way. And yeah, it's a very strange life, but I've loved every single minute of it. And people have often said, how could you do that? It's so insecure. And my first wife, her parents were very old-fashioned and people who had come up from poor beginnings and made a comfortable living and couldn't understand, simply couldn't comprehend not having a regular job. It was beyond their comprehension. And my view was that it was exciting not to know what was going to happen next week. I actually don't want to know what's going to happen, that I'm going to have a slightly bigger office next year and a little bit more money. But yeah.
It's my wife is a sole trader. She has her own business, and she works in sort of gig economy in a sense, and she can have a really great year and then a lean year, and you just don't know how it's going to be. Like I couldn't deal with that insecureness. I like a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday personally, but it takes a certain type of person to be able to relish in that chaos. I use chaos in sort of a fun, creative way, not in a dreary, dark way, because it can be fun and creative. And I imagine your job can be at times, certainly.
Well, yes, and I mean, people sort of, I could be doing a night shoot on a windswept, rainy mountain, and it's freezing cold, and I'm as happy as a clam. It's something that all the juices are flowing. But also it's sometimes been tied in with world-changing moments. I was in Hong Kong when the Tiananmen thing was happening, and we were very aware of it. It was on the television, the student demonstrations and so forth in Tiananmen Square. And then one night we were doing a night shoot outside the city in a kind of derelict building ruin. And I stepped out to have a cigarette. It was about 3 a.m. or something. And all our Chinese crew were listening to little transistor radios, and they were weeping. And I said, what's happened? What's happened? And so all the tanks have gone in. And they were crushing the students. And so then, of course, the next day in Hong Kong, it was extraordinary to be in Hong Kong. Quite extraordinary.
And there's a few people that could say they were there for that, and just to witness that as an observer from the outside, not as someone who lived in that country. Yeah.
Oh, it was quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary.
As we wrap up, I've got sort of 2 main questions I want to throw at you. And I first of all want to celebrate what's happening now in the future. I look at what you've done recently. You did some episodes of The Great Show for All Mankind, Ronald D. Moore's show. You did some voice work for Warhammer. And I noticed you've got a couple of things coming up soon. So the question I have for you, Constantine, is what can we look forward to in the future with you? What are you working on at the moment?
Well, nothing visual. I no longer have an agent. I've kind of tumbled down the ladder of agents the last few years. So I'm not expecting to get any more film work. I don't put myself up for dialogue coaching anymore because I don't really want to go away from home for any length of time.
Mm.
I'm very happy here. So I do voice work from home. I've got a studio kind of set up, and so I do bits of voice stuff. And I'm thrilled to have the occasional contact with young people who are interested in what I've done in the past. I'm going to something I've never done before in October. I'm going to this sort of convention, James Bond convention.
Oh yeah. So this will be your first. Wow.
It'll be my first, yes, and I'm sort of surprised that anyone is interested. But there you go.
You'll be fine.
Which one is that actually? Because this is coming up before that all happens, so we might be able to put a little love their way. Do you know what event that is?
Yes, it's called Shaken But Not Stirred. I think it's
Shaken Not Stirred. Yeah, I know the guys. Matthew Wood and the rest of the team. Yes, I know those guys. Good friends of the show.
Yeah, and
is that the one at Pinewood? I think
it's near Pinewood. I think
the
it's
hotel.
Yeah.
I know the show.
And he interviewed me some time ago. And actually asked me to go to another convention. I said no. And then there was this sort of anniversary one coming up, and he said, "Oh, please come as it's the anniversary." And I said, "Yeah, okay, why not? I'd not done one before. I don't know that anyone would be interested in me, but yeah."
All they want to hear is colorful stories about film shoots. You can easily do that.
Get used to signing your autograph on things, because you'll be doing a lot of that too.
Yeah, so I believe. They said, "What do you want to charge for it?" I said, "I don't know. I've never done it." And he said, "Well, we'll fix it at £10. I said, "What?" So anyway, it'll go to charity. I said, "I'm not going to keep the £10. I'll give it to a charity." And yeah,
there'll be a lot of selfies too. Look forward to that.
Well, that's okay. I don't mind.
You have to bring an old PC from GoldenEye, like an old computer in the background, and try and sell it with a tie or something. Make a fun shoot out of it.
Oh no, I have to do the comb over. I have to do the comb over.
I'm sure we can sort a hairpiece out. I'm not far. I'll run one down to you. That's not a problem.
Indeed.
Well, okay. Well, the people, if you're going to that show, you've got Constantine to look forward to. And I guess the last question, and this question has been asked to every single person, and interestingly enough, asked to all the directors that we've had on the show that you've worked with that we've mentioned. They've all been asked this question. So there's no pressure, but there's a lot of pressure here. Constantine, we want to know what your personal favorite spy movie is of all time.
That's an interesting one. Does The Third Man count? It doesn't really count as a spy movie, is it? No.
It counts.
It does. There's a lot of espionage in it, and it has been brought up by a number of people in these interviews.
That happens to be my favorite film of all time. I think it's the best film ever made. I wouldn't strictly call it a spy movie, but it's, yeah, I think it's a perfect film. Spy. I think probably, I think the Michael Caine film.
The Ipcress File?
The Ipcress File, probably. This very.
Yeah, that's a classic movie. Yeah,
such a good one. Yeah, but The Third Man is the best film ever made.
It's one that we've had mentioned multiple times, and Ipcress File is one that's been mentioned quite a few times too. There's a wonderful book, The Official Story of the Film by John Walsh on The Third Man. I'd recommend if you love that film particularly. It's got a lot of interesting stuff that happened behind the scenes on that film. I've got it on my bookshelf up here. It's great. But yeah, I mean,
what's it called?
It's The Third Man, The Official Story of the Film.
Okay.
By John Walsh. I'll send you a link to it. You can have a look. It's a wonderful sort of coffee table book that goes behind the scenes of how it was made, and behind the scenes of films is what me and Cam love. So
yeah. Well, as you see, I can give you a lot of behind the scenes.
We've certainly had a few, but Constantine, it's been a genuine pleasure. I don't think anyone can quibble with the third man, the Ipcris file, and thank you for taking us on a journey through your spy movies. It's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to meet you and talk to you, and I hope entertain with anecdotes.
The masses. I'm sure they've all loved it because we certainly have, but thank you very much.
100%.
Thank you.
Well, there you go, folks. That was Constantine Gregory. What a guy.
Yeah, a really good storyteller, and we got some really interesting information in regards to GoldenEye. You think you kind of know everything about the production of GoldenEye with books like the James Bond Archives and basically all the websites going on and podcasts doing the history of the film. But he had a story about a table read, basically, that Martin Campbell had put together. Not so much a table read, but a recorded recreation of the script that Martin Campbell could have to kind of get a sense of the story. I'd never heard about this anecdote before.
I'd never heard it either, and I still struggle a little bit to wrap my head around how that helps.
Yeah.
But I dare not get into the process of Martin Campbell.
No, of course not. I wonder if he actually did that for Casino Royale.
That's a good question. We'll have to go and talk to some other people that worked on Casino Royale.
Is that a thing he does with all his films? Like, was he doing them for, like, I don't know, Edge of Darkness or Green Lantern or Zorro? I'd love to know.
If anyone knows, let us know, because we'd be interested to hear. There are some scenes I would have liked to have heard the recording for.
Okay. Is it the Xenia Onatopp scenes?
It is the Xenia Onatopp scenes. Like, I don't know, because Constantine was also reading the stage directions on the script, so, Xenia tightens her thighs around the general's waist. The general has a look of delight on his face, close to orgasm or something like that. It's just like, but like Constantine reading out with a very authoritative voice that he does have.
Yes, that would definitely be something worth listening to. I feel like Martin Campbell probably doesn't even have that recording anymore, but it sounds amazing.
I bet someone does.
You think so? It's in the archives?
Definitely in the archive somewhere.
Yeah. I wonder if that's one of those things that is like deep, deep, deep into the Eon archives where they're even like, what is this? How do we have this?
Why do we have this?
Yeah, why?
This is the sort of stuff that you only get on nerdy little podcasts like ours.
That's right, yeah, totally.
You get Martin Campbell on the show, you're going to get some like recycled story about how it was great to reintroduce Bond 2 times, blah, blah, blah. But he won't tell you where the bodies are buried.
Right. He may not even remember doing this if this was like a method he tried once or twice, but has since, abandoned.
Well, I know he's getting on a bit, but I don't think he's senile, Cam.
Well, he may not really think about it as being a crucial part of his creative process at this point.
Pull it back. No, I'm pulling your leg. Maybe not. Maybe it was like maybe it was a coping mechanism for him. Like, this is a big film for me at that point. 1995 Bond film is probably the biggest of his career at that stage, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was coming off of No Escape with Ray Liotta.
Yeah.
Which was a fairly, lower budget, like prison action film.
Yeah, and he just wanted to have everything on his side. And if that was his technique of visualizing a scene by hearing the actors play it out, hey, who are we to argue with greatness?
We can't argue with the end results, clearly.
No, we cannot. And I would imagine he probably did it again since. But yeah, so it was interesting to hear about that. It's something that hasn't really ever been catalogued. I mean, I don't know every single page of every single Bond encyclopedic book. Maybe it is mentioned somewhere, but I've never seen it.
No, exactly.
I mean, from my side of things, I think apart from that, that was a great story that jumped out to me. Was also just away from Bond. I mean, talking about Diamonds a little bit was fun, and just asking about what it's like being a background actor. It might seem like a silly question when I asked it, but it is actually a skill. And if you pay attention to background actors, sometimes they are really doing a song and dance to get your attention.
The guy sweeping the broom in Quantum of Solace?
He was sweeping the broom?
Yeah, what am I saying? Sweeping the room. He's sweeping like the air with a broom, I should say.
He might as well be sweeping the broom. Maybe that's the new way to say it.
Hashtag sweeping the broom.
Yeah, get it started, and then it will very quickly stop. Yeah, I mean, and they do a lot to stand out because they don't have a speaking part, so they want something to sort of make themselves, appeal to you as the viewer. And the best actors just know how to blend in, but have something that stands out. And so Constantine telling us that and how he managed it. I mean, it was just a lot of playing with beakers and knobs and dials, I imagine, on the set of Diamonds.
Yeah. I mean, that scene is very memorable. But it was interesting because you think about being a background extra, you don't want to be completely invisible because you want the audience to be aware of activity in the scene. But if you're hamming it up too much, everyone is just staring at you, which is entirely not your job as a background actor.
Especially when Sean Connery is on the set with you.
Exactly, yes.
And the other thing, like, it's always fun talking to people that worked on these older Bond films. And because we had a few now with Diamonds, obviously we had Bruce Glover very early on, the late Bruce Glover. But then since then we had Lana Wood in the summer of last year, and now Constantine's been on to talk about it. And there's always this idea in my head of working on a Bond film that it's just like a rave afterwards. And the Roger Moore films seem to be like there was a party most days afterwards. The Sean Connery films don't seem to have been that sort of set. Like, in my head, after, like, someone goes, that's a wrap for the day, folks. Well, actually, it should be a British voice, because generally it was a British set. But anyway, I just have, like, Crazy, Crazy Nights by Kiss playing in my head, and everyone doing, like, keg stands.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't that set.
No, that's not the case when we talked to Luciana Paluzzi. And also when we've Valerie Leon also indicated that as well. Even Constantine said, Sean Connery is very professional, but he's not the guy who's going to be, let's hang out with the crew after hours type.
No, it's a real shame because I would like to have seen Sean Connery do a keg stand.
Who wouldn't?
And then his little mop of hair would flop off to the floor. Just like Gene Simmons when he does it as well.
Oh, right, yes. Although Gene Simmons doesn't drink, so he's not doing a keg stand.
Oh, it's not Crazy, Crazy Nights for him anymore then, I say.
No, he's never been a drinking or drugs guy.
Well, good for him, I say. Good for him. And on the other side of it as well, like, because we go to Vegas most years, although that's died down recently, for a multitude of reasons. I used to think like we weren't living our best Vegas lives when we would go to a convention and just sort of hang out a lot and like hang out in rooms and maybe go out for a cheap dinner here or there. We weren't going to nightclubs or any sort of particular escapades. But what it turns out is what we were actually having was a Sean Connery Vegas trip.
That's right. Yes. Just, very professional, firm handshakes. And, good night. I'll see you in the morning.
Bed at 10, up for 7.
That's right.
That is actually something we've done in Vegas before.
Yes, it's true. We have had some early mornings.
We have. And some early nights, too. But then the other thing as well, like coming off of Bond, I know this is the GoldenEye celebration week. I did not expect to get half of those stories about Russia House.
No kidding. And that continues the Connery thread, too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I was building to. Thank you for seeing that through line and explaining it to everyone.
That's what I'm here for.
This is what Scott just did. It's called a link. Going through sort of the idea that originally he was a dialect coach, and then he wasn't magically, but ended up doing some other bits and bobs on the film. But also just the idea of filming in post-Cold War Russia. We heard a little bit about that with Fred Skepsy, the director of Russia House, when we had him on a couple of years back. But hearing it from someone who wasn't in the main cast, but was around for a lot of the shooting, because he was meant to be doing dialect work with everyone, really, including Sean. It's just interesting, like, things that me and you take for granted. Like, I could go downstairs now and make some toast and watch some TV and just have a nice evening. That was like, the idea of having buttered toast was something that people would queue up for. Like putting out a spread at a birthday was probably wow for them. They were bartering food, they were bartering clothes. It must just have been quite not a tragic place to go. I don't want to say that, but just a bit harrowing, perhaps, to have that coming from the West, going to sort of the east side of the Berlin Wall, or whatever you want to call it, that sort of Cold War state. Oh, it's the what's the name for it? The Iron Curtain. That's what I'm looking for. The Iron Curtain. And just seeing how they lived, and it was in a much worse place than what TV had told you.
Yeah, and he's talking about how like there was just the endless robberies of like the costume department, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, Connery's wigs just kept disappearing.
Did he have one in that movie? I don't remember.
He didn't actually. He had a bit of a bald spot going on, and as a follically challenged man, I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's like that period where Connery, going forward, is like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I just don't care.
Like, I remember we watched The Man Who Would Be King recently on the Patreon, patreon.com/spyhards. That's a cheap plug. And he's proudly wearing his bald patch.
Yeah.
And he looks great.
Yeah, he does. He's always looked great for the most part.
Oh, well, what was the one he didn't, Cam? Come on.
I mean, there's those later Bond films where you're like, oh, Connery seems to have lost a step, but he got it back, damn it.
In Never Say Never Again, he had it back, I'd say.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we spoke about Diamonds just now. It wasn't his best look, although he wasn't really bothered to get in shape for Diamonds, I think.
Diamonds is the one I think of, yes.
Yeah, I've got a picture. I think it's from Billy's Bond art around my house somewhere of him in the pink shirt from Diamonds, and it's just it's a great picture, but it just sort of sums up Connery at that point. Like the shirt's not even like tucked in properly, and it's just like, sod it. Like I'm Bond, deal with it.
Yeah,
and that's the Connery swagger that we love to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, all right then, Cam. That is one GoldenEye chapter down, but what do we have coming up next?
Well, Scott, we are going to talk next week to Richard Whelan, who is a second unit director and assistant director, depending on the film, sometimes a producer as well. But back in 1995, he worked on the second unit of GoldenEye, and he is someone who was there for the bungee jump, the tank chase, Xenia's battle in the jungle with Bond and Natalia, all the big set pieces. And so you are going to hear stories galore from the set, some of which have never been published. So there's some great stuff here.
Yeah, we were bowled over by this, so much so that we had to completely redo our scheduling for these next couple of weeks. It is a fantastic interview. I do say so myself. It's one of those like Bond treasure trove interviews that we sometimes stumble upon. So, set your dials for next Tuesday as we talk to Richard Whelan. And the fun doesn't stop there either. The week this episode comes out, I'm also sitting down, just me, myself, with the man behind the fantastic YouTube channel Heavy Spoilers, Mr. Paul Tweddle, who is a huge James Bond fan. He's done a lot of video essays on James Bond, and he wanted to talk about GoldenEye and his love of the film and how it influenced him into getting into the world of like talking about films and film journalism and film critique. A lot to enjoy in that one too. So dial in for this Friday as we go with Paul Tweddle for Heavy Spoilers, all about GoldenEye. And then next week, we're back with more GoldenEye fun with second AD, Mr. Richard Whelan. Now, if you liked what you heard on this episode, come and join us over on our Patreon, patreon.com/spyhards. There's a ton of cool stuff going on over there. I mean, you have to pay a bit of money for it, but, the cost of... I do hate this analogy, but it is a really good way of breaking it down. For the cost of a one coffee per month, you can get 3 bonus episodes and every single normal Spy Hards episode completely ad-free. I mean, I'd have that over a no-drip venti latte.
Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't, Scott?
Well, you don't drink coffee, Cam, so it's probably wasted on you.
Exactly. So, I mean...
So why don't you join the Patreon, Cam? What are you doing?
I've given them everything I own.
I'll give the Rosh's God, Captain. That is fair. But come and join us over there. We talk about non-spy movies. We talk about spy TV. You always say we want you to talk about spy television shows. Well, it's on the Patreon, folks. Go and pay for it and get it in your ears. Come and join us this week as we continue our discussion and celebration of 30 years of GoldenEye. Find us wherever you get your social media at SpyHards, SpyHards. But until next time, folks, Cam and I are off to record a reenactment of the
Bond Xenia sauna scene from GoldenEye.
What can 160 years of experience teach you about the future? When it comes to protecting what matters, Pacific Life provides life insurance, retirement income, and employee benefits for people and businesses building a more confident tomorrow. Strategies rooted in strength and backed by experience. Ask a financial professional how Pacific Life can help you today. Pacific Life Insurance Company, Omaha, Nebraska, and in New York, Pacific Life and Annuity, Phoenix, Arizona.
If you're a Chicago business looking to give back locally, Gardeneers is your kind of nonprofit. We work in under-resourced schools across the South and West Sides, helping students grow fresh food and learn about health, sustainability, and equity. Your corporate sponsorship supports hands-on education, youth mentorship, and the transformation of school gardens into vibrant green spaces. Learn more about sponsorship opportunities at Gardeneers.org and let's grow something together.
This podcast is part of Podomedy, the UK's podcast comedy network. Why not laugh at what else we've got? Visit Podomedy.com.